UNESCO Remote Radio Week 2021. Get ready for a week devoted to helping radio stations broadcast remotely.
Hello to everyone. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm pleased to be here with you. I'm told I have a few minutes to deal with a very vast and complex topic, the one on disinformation and how journalism could deal with it. I'll try to give you some ideas, some suggestions, of course, the short time I have, and then this needs to be further explored. First, let's define disinformation as well as distinguish between disinformation and misinformation. So, disinformation is information that is false and deliberately created to harm a person, a social group, a political party, an organization, or a country. While misinformation is information that is again false, but is not created with the intention to cause harm. It may cause harm, but that was not the original intention, as opposed to disinformation, where often there is a well-orchestrated strategy to cause harm. Please note also that I've been referring to false information and not to the famous and infamous so-called fake news. Why? Because this term has been used to discredit professional journalism. So we try not to use it. And actually, if you think news, actually much better than me, you're a media professional, could not be fake, should already been a result of professional verification, could then, of course, unfold or reveal to be inaccurate if there was not this proper verification process. So, is this information new? No, it's an old phenomenon. Some sorts of propaganda are as old as history, if not prehistory. And even in time of modern journalists starting from 18th, 19th century, it is said, for instance, that truth is the first casualty of any war. But there are new aspects related to the digital and technological evolution which are impacting on disinformation nowadays. Let me mention two. The first is, of course, connected to the role of social media as main gatekeeper in the new information ecosystem, and the fact that social media have a huge, unprecedented power of amplifying misinformation, disinformation, with, for instance, algorithms that make such content viral, again, at an unprecedented scale. And sometimes there is also a business model behind that. Another aspect due to social media is the possibility actually to micro-target, meaning to personalize the disinformation content, adapting to specific user, to the demand side, to the receivers, as opposed to the supply side. And this micro-targeting can be based on a large amount of information collected about these users, or even this individual user, about her, him, about a small group. So this is the first aspect, of course, that is making disinformation nowadays a particular phenomenon of particular amplitude, social media. The second one, again, related to new technologies, for instance, big data, artificial intelligence, is deepfakes videos that appear, for instance, to be genuinely about a certain public figure saying something, but is, of course, entirely artificial, created again with artificial intelligence. What is the impact of the recent upscale disinformation on the work of media? So I think on one hand, journalists could contribute themselves for lack of verification, ability to spot disinformation, to further amplify this disinformation, to become part of the equation, part of the phenomenon. Even, of course, it's not conscious, or it's not deliberate, or it's not the will, but this is part of what can happen. So disinformation is moving from, let's say, social media into also legacy traditional media. Second, there is also a sort of collateral impact of this phenomenon in contributing to the public trust or distrust vis-à-vis journalism and journalists. Often journalism, even increasingly journalism is sometimes questioned. There is an increased public distrust as part of the new information ecosystem vis-à-vis journalism. The third aspect I would like to mention is that some measures to counter disinformation implemented by governments, with laws, decrees, etc., or by social media companies on a voluntary basis, these measures may actually impact on media freedom, may actually have a chilling effect on freedom of expression. So this is why journalists and journalists should care about this upscale disinformation phenomenon. And what to do to respond to that? So for you journalists, radio presenters, radio managers, radio producers, it is mission critical to understand the nature and magnitude of this mechanism, this information, and thus be equipped to react to these threats in a holistic way. What to do to respond to it? Let me give you 4 suggestions or ideas to further explore. First one, doing your job normally and professionally. One of the best antidotes to disinformation is by exemplary journalistic practice that serves as a highly valued and credible alternative. That goes hands in hands with the media information role in equipping the public with critical thinking, as well as understanding the role of free, professional, pluralistic media in a democracy. So a pillar, of course, is public interest media in a given ecosystem to compensate, to be antidote, to react, to be a response to this information. Second, being aware of the phenomenon of digitally enabled disinformation, thus doubling down on verification and ethical journalism in the public interest and learning new skills for fact-checking on complex issues. For instance, investigative journalism, collaborative journalism, database journalism, etc., etc. Third suggestion is to see disinformation as newsworthy phenomenon. So exploring that, investigating that. There is an increased number of interesting investigative journalist stories about the mechanism of disinformation, about the functioning of this algorithm that are not transparent enough. The watchdog role of media, for instance, in times of election, is essential to unveil and thus partially neutralize disinformation strategies. Fourth, last but not least, is being equipped also in terms of new safety challenges to the journalistic profession. For example, digital protection of sources in times of mass surveillance, with, as you know, very limited known privacy, requires, of course, new skills. Another aspect is related to online harassment of journalists, especially women journalists, and thus, of course, and for that as well, we need to be equipped to respond. So these are 4 suggestions for you to journalists, as radio professionals, to respond, to react to this upscale, digitally enabled disinformation. I stop here for the sake of time. Hope this can serve as a basis for you to further explore this issue. Let me just suggest some additional materials to follow up, which are easily available in many languages on UNESCO website. The first one is a handbook for journalist education and training about journalism, fake news, using a kind of critical way, and disinformation. Again, the title is Journalism, Fake News and Disinformation. You type it, you get it in many languages. The second one is again a publication, a handbook about protecting journalism sources in the digital age that provide practical tools for that. The third one is a publication on global trends in online violence against women journalists, which is the result of a vast survey, also giving solution-oriented response to this phenomenon, this sad phenomenon. To conclude, as we are on 1st of November, one day ahead of the commemoration of the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, which is on 2nd of November, proclaimed by the UN General Assembly, allow me to invite you to join UNESCO in the campaign with the hashtag #ProtectJournalists. This campaign this year calls on the attention to the urgency to investigate and prosecute threats, whether online or physical, and to protect journalists. Thank you very much.